Haley out here from the ADN studio where we continue our summer football preview series by taking a closer look at the overall pick to win the American this year, Houston. It's safe to say that year one of Tom Herman's tenure at Houston couldn't have gone much better. The Cougars capped a 13-win season with an American Athletic Conference title and a convincing win against Florida State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl as Houston finished the year ranked number 8 in the final polls. Houston's challenge will be a different one in 2016 as the Cougars enter the season as the overwhelming favorite to repeat as conference champions and find themselves ranked number 15 in the preseason poll. And there's plenty of hype around the program as Houston kicks things off with one of the most highly anticipated games of the regular season when they face number 3 Oklahoma at NRG Stadium. However, the hype exists everywhere except for the Houston locker room. Even though the Cougars returned some key players from last season, including early Heisman Trophy contender Greg Ward Jr. at quarterback and big play linebacker Stephen Taylor, Herman has made it clear that last year's success is firmly in the rearview mirror, and the focus for 2016 is simply on going 1-0. To give us a better idea about where the Cougs are at as they gear up to play the Sooners this week, Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle joins us on Skype up next.
We are American. We have the grit to dig deep and the courage to stand together. For us, it's all or nothing. You see, that's power. We are power.
Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in with us here on the American Digital Network. We're talking Houston football today and are joined on Skype by the Houston Chronicle's Joseph Duarte. Great to have you on the show with us. There's no question that as a program, Houston has high expectations this season. We know Tom Herman banned all Peach Bowl attire from workouts this year, but what are some of the other things he's done to keep this team focused on the future and quiet the noise from their recent success?
Well, Haley, first, thanks for having me. Secondly, Tom Herman does just about every little thing possible to motivate his program. This year he brought in Jerome Bettis, which was interesting for Champions Night. Had them go over that. He likes to bring in a different speaker each year. This year it was the Hall of Fame running back. So that was one thing he's done. And then, Tom's also, they got some things going in their new locker room where he's got a countdown clock. And we asked him, what is that countdown for? We thought maybe for the season opener against Oklahoma. He said that's a 24-hour clock. They only look towards tomorrow. So that's kind of their 1-0 mentality. Because a lot of people think, well, what's Houston doing for Oklahoma? They didn't start preparing for Oklahoma until just the last few days. So he's trying to keep them very focused and very grounded throughout preseason camp.
Coach Herman has a veteran quarterback to work with this season, and while Greg Ward Jr. is an early Heisman contender, he's a much more developed player now than the wide receiver turned quarterback midseason just a couple years ago. What has been the most significant improvement in Greg's game, especially since Herman took over?
Well, when Tom Herman came to Houston, first thing he said was, he didn't know what he had at quarterback, and in fact, he said, I don't know if Greg Ward can even throw a lick. So he didn't watch film specifically so that he wouldn't have any kind of preconceived ideas about what his players were like. But once he got Greg Ward in here, saw what he did, he knew the talent was there, but still there was that – hadn't been a quarterback issue for Greg. He didn't know how to do reads. He didn't really just know how to scan the field. So what Greg Ward did was he spent a lot of time in the coaches' offices with offensive coordinator Major Applewhite and Tom Herman, and really try to become more of a complete quarterback. Now, Tom Herman says he's still scratching the surface as he goes into his second full year as a quarterback, but really to see where he's come from and the fact that now last year he was a Maxwell Award finalist. He was mentioned in the Heisman discussion. This is a guy that I don't know a lot of people could have predicted what he would have become as a quarterback. We knew he was a good athlete, but Greg Ward certainly has developed the traits of a good quarterback, and now he's also become more vocal. He went through a speech media session training this offseason where they put him in uncomfortable situations so that he could learn to develop more of a vocal leadership role. So that was another big step for Greg Ward this offseason.
Now, defensively, the front seven seems as though they'll continue to be dominant this season. But what are maybe more of the question marks on defense that this unit is looking to improve on before the start of the season?
Well, first, in the middle of the defense, kind of the heart of the defense, they lost to Landon Roberts at middle linebacker. They're going to have to find the guy who replaces him, not so much maybe that senior leadership captain role, but more of the on-field production. And Steve Taylor is likely going to be that guy. He led the American last year with, I believe, 10 sacks and had close to 20 tackles for loss. He's a guy that they're going to count on a lot. And then the secondary is completely new. You have 4 starters gone, so other than Brandon Wilson, who was kind of one of the more multi-threat players in college football last year with his ability to, he played running back one game and had 100 yards late in the season. Other than that, they're starting from scratch with the DBs. And I believe I looked up the combined starts between the 4 new starters is maybe less than 10. So a lot of experience to replace in that secondary, and that's going to be a big concern, at least for the first few weeks of the season.
Tom Herman's had some time now to do some recruiting of his own. Are there any names that you think could make an impact immediately this season that might not be on people's radars yet? Well,
it starts with Ed Oliver. He was the number 4 recruit in the nation. He was a local guy from suburban Houston. His brother is an offensive lineman on the team, so it really just worked out that he was the first domino in the Tom Herman H-Town takeover movement. You got him to commit, then a lot of other recruits followed after him. He's one guy, they're repping him at all 3 defensive line positions. Wouldn't be surprising that at some point this year he's seeing considerable playing time. And you look on in the secondary, they have a young man, Colin Wilder. He's from Katy High School, also near Houston. Has never sat the bench at all. I mean, he played, I believe it was 64 games that he started in high school. So this young man is going to come in and see some action. And then you have some receivers that they're going to definitely count on. You have a Courtney Lark, a Keith Corbin. Those are the 2 names that come to mind. So if you're a skill position and Tom Herman recruits you, you're going to play from day one.
You mentioned the countdown clock in the locker room and one game at a time mentality. Tough test right out of the gates against number 3 Oklahoma. We know it's going to be a battle in both teams' season opener. Houston proved they could play in the big games last season, but for the Cougs to win this one, what do you think will be the biggest factor in coming out with the W?
Well, I kind of look at it like the Florida State game last year. Nobody thought that Houston was going to be able to stay on toe-to-toe with Florida State, and we all know what happened. You're just not going to have to. You're not going to be able to allow Oklahoma to get out to a big lead. They have too many weapons. This is a team that was in the college football playoff last year. Houston has to limit things and take advantage. I would imagine turnovers are going to be big in this game. Where Houston gets hurt is in the secondary, and Oklahoma's got a pretty good quarterback back there with Baker Mayfield and a couple of receivers. I think they'll fare well against their running game. Oklahoma has 2 really strong running backs, but as Tom Herman said this spring, if people thought they were good at stopping the run last year, they could be even better this year. So I think a lot of it's going to depend on how Houston can settle back there in the secondary and get a few stops, because that's their one glaring weakness going into the season.
All right, Joseph. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us today. Enjoy the big game next Saturday.
Thanks for having me, Haley.
All right, well, here's a look at Houston's 2016 opening schedule. Looking past Oklahoma in Week 1 at NRG Stadium, the Cougs will return to their home field at TD ECU in Week 2 against Lamar. Then it's on the road for 2 weekends at Cincinnati and Texas State before heading back to Houston to welcome UConn, who was the only blemish on an almost perfect season in 2015. Thanks for tuning in with us here at the ADN. I'm Haley Outen.